People think betrayal makes you scream, but when my husband walked into my hotel lobby with his hand on another woman's waist, I did not make a sound. I simply straightened my name tag and pulled up the reservation for 3 nights in the executive suite. I did not cry as I handed him the key cards. I just gave him my perfect 5-star service smile, because sometimes the sharpest knife in the room is a polite greeting. My name is Claire Martin, and I have spent the last 10 years perfecting the art of invisibility in the hospitality industry, specifically at the level of the Fairmont Hollow here in Denver. The best service is the kind you feel but never truly see. I treat the lobby floor like a grand stage where I am both the conductor and the lead cellist, ensuring that every movement flows into the next without a single jarring note. The air here always smells of white tea and cedar, a scent engineered to make wealthy people feel calm enough to spend money they do not need to spend. It was a Tuesday evening, just past 6 o'clock. The light filtering through the 2-story glass facade was turning that bruised shade of purple that settles over the Rockies in winter. I was standing behind the main reception desk, covering a short break for one of my junior associates. I had just finished processing a check-in for a delegation of 12 businessmen from Tokyo. Their itinerary was complex, involving 4 separate wake-up calls and specific dietary restrictions that required coordination with the kitchen. But I handled it with the muscle memory of a woman who could organize a coup d'etat if she had the right spreadsheet. I typed the final note into the system, smiled my signature smile, and handed over the key packets. As they bowed and moved toward the elevators, the automatic glass doors at the entrance slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss. The rush of cold air hit me first, followed by the sound of expensive leather shoes on the polished marble. I looked up, ready to offer the standard greeting. That was when the world stopped turning. Grant Wilder walked in. My husband was supposed to be in Chicago. He had kissed me goodbye that morning at 7:30, complaining about a delayed flight and a grueling schedule of client meetings. He was wearing the charcoal suit I had picked out for him 2 Christmases ago, the one that made his shoulders look broader than they actually were. He looked handsome. He looked relaxed. He looked entirely unlike a man who was rushing to a business meeting, and he was not alone. His hand was resting on the small of a woman's back. It was not a casual touch. It was possessive, familiar, and comfortable. It was the kind of touch that spoke of history. The woman was stunning in a way that felt entirely calculated. She was younger than me, perhaps 26 or 27. She wore a minimalist black dress that probably cost more than my first car. And her hair was a glossy curtain of blonde that moved in perfect synchronization with her steps. She carried a designer bag in the crook of her arm like a weapon. Her name, I would learn in moments, was Sloane Keating, and she walked with the terrifying confidence of someone who believes she is the main character in everyone else's life. I stood there, frozen in a way that no one on the other side of the counter could perceive. My face remained a mask of polite interest. My spine remained straight, but inside my chest, something violent was happening. It felt as though someone had reached inside and extinguished a flame that I had been carefully tending for 6 years. They did not see me yet. Grant was leaning in to whisper something in her ear, and she threw her head back, laughing a soft, tinkling laugh that echoed off the high ceilings. They approached the counter, and Sloane took the lead. She placed both hands on the marble surface, her manicured nails clicking softly. "Reservation under Wilder," she said. Her voice was smooth, confident, and utterly oblivious. I did not move. I did not blink. I simply stared at the top of her head, waiting for the inevitable collision of reality and deceit. Grant was busy adjusting his cufflinks, looking down at his watch. "Honey, did you check if the suite has a view?" he asked her, his voice low and intimate, the same voice he used to ask me if I wanted coffee in the morning. "It has a view." "Mr. Wilder," I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of the operations manager of the Fairmont Hollow. It was professional, detached, and cold as liquid nitrogen. Grant froze. The motion was absolute. 1 second he was adjusting his cuff, and the next, he was a statue. Slowly, agonizingly, he lifted his head. When our eyes met, I watched the color drain from his face so fast it was almost clinical. He went from a healthy flush to the pallor of a corpse in less than 2 seconds. His eyes widened, encompassing a horror so pure it would have been satisfying if it were not destroying my life. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His brain was misfiring. Unable to reconcile the two worlds he had kept separate for God knows how long, his hand, the one holding his phone, went slack. The phone slipped from his fingers. It tumbled through the air in slow motion, hitting the Italian marble floor with a sickening crack. The sound was explosive in the quiet lobby. It sounded like a gunshot. It sounded like a judge's gavel slamming down. Every head in the lobby turned. The bellman paused by the luggage cart. The concierge looked up from his computer. Grant did not look at his phone. He could not look away from me. He looked like a man who had just stepped off a ledge and realized too late that there was no net. I did not look at the shattered phone. I did not look at Sloane, who was now frowning, looking between Grant's terrified face and my impassive one, trying to solve the puzzle. "Good evening, Mr. Wilder," I said. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I did not need to ask for his ID. I did not need his credit card. I knew the numbers by heart. I typed in the override code for a VIP check-in, bypassing the usual pleasantries. I could see his throat work as he tried to swallow. "Claire," he rasped. It was barely a whisper, a plea. I ignored it. I ignored him. I looked at the screen, confirming the details. 3 nights. The executive suite on the 14th floor. Champagne on arrival. The total cost was $2,400 a night. Charged to the visa ending in 4588, our joint account. The audacity of it made the air leave my lungs, but I forced it back in. I would not faint. I would not scream. I was working. I picked up the 2 key cards and slid them into the small, elegant envelope with the hotel's logo embossed in gold. I placed the envelope on the marble counter and slid it toward him with 2 fingers. Sloane was staring at me now, her eyes narrowing. She was beginning to understand. The tension radiating off Grant was enough to choke a person. He looked like he might vomit right there on my pristine floor. "Claire, please," he managed to say, his voice cracking. He reached a hand out, as if to touch the counter, to bridge the distance between husband and wife. I pulled my hands back and clasped them in front of me. I looked him dead in the eye. I did not see the man I loved. I saw a guest, a very problematic guest. "Hope you enjoyed your stay, sir," I said. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I used the past tense deliberately. It was not a mistake. It was an obituary for our marriage. The lobby felt suddenly freezing, as if I had sucked all the warmth out of the room. Grant flinched as if I had slapped him. Sloane took a half step back, her confidence faltering for the first time. Before he could say another word, before he could beg or explain or make a scene that would require security, I shifted my gaze. I looked past his shoulder to the elderly couple standing uncertainly behind him with their luggage. "Good evening," I said to them, my voice pitching up into perfect, welcoming warmth. "Welcome to the Fairmont Hollow. How may I assist you today?" I turned my back on Grant Wilder to grab a luggage tag, dismissing him as completely as if he were a ghost, behind me. I heard the jagged intake of his breath, but I did not turn around. I had a job to do. I walked away from the front desk with a gait that was mechanically steady. My heels clicked against the polished floor in a rhythm that betrayed nothing, but my peripheral vision was blurring at the edges. I navigated the back corridors of the hotel, passing housekeeping carts and room service trays, nodding at staff members who smiled and said good evening, Mrs. Wilder, every time they used that name. I felt a fresh laceration across my chest, but I did not flinch. I kept moving until I reached the heavy oak door of the operations manager's office. I stepped inside, I closed the door, I turned the deadbolt. Then, and only then, did I let my shoulders drop. I leaned back against the wood, sliding down until I was crouching on the floor, my knees pulled up to my chest. I looked at my watch. It was 6:14 in the evening. I gave myself exactly 60 seconds. 1 minute. That was the budget. I squeezed my eyes shut and let the shock hit me like a physical blow. The humiliation burned under my skin like a fever. How many staff members had seen them? How many of my employees were currently whispering near the luggage storage, exchanging pitying glances about the boss and her wandering husband? The anger came next, hot and suffocating, making my hands shake where they gripped my knees. I wanted to scream until the soundproof glass shattered. I wanted to march up to the 14th floor and set the executive suite on fire. 50 seconds. I breathed in through my nose, counting to 4. I held it for 7. I exhaled for 8. My mind flashed back to 7 o'clock this morning. I was standing in our kitchen, holding a ceramic mug of coffee, watching Grant tie his tie. He had kissed my forehead and told me he would miss me. I had swatted his arm playfully and sent a text message 10 minutes later. "Do not forget to buy the almond milk on your way home Friday." He had replied with a heart emoji. Milk. I was worrying about lactose-free milk while he was packing condoms and planning a 3-day sex marathon in my workplace. 10 seconds. The heat in my chest began to recede, replaced by something far more useful. It was a cold, hard sensation, like ice water flooding my veins. The shaking in my hands stopped. The tears that had threatened to spill were reabsorbed. I was no longer a wife. I was a manager handling a crisis. Time was up. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and walked to my desk. I sat down in my ergonomic chair and woke up my computer. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a fraction of a second before I logged into the property management system. I needed to see the data. Emotions lie. But data never does. I pulled up the reservation. Suite 1401, the Panoramic View Suite. 3 nights. Checkout was scheduled for Friday morning. The room rate was $2,400 per night, plus tax and resort fees. Including the pre-ordered champagne and the couple's massage scheduled for tomorrow at 10 in the morning. The total projected bill was close to $9,000. I looked at the payment method on file. Visa ending in 4588. I stared at the numbers. That was our joint savings account, the account we were using to save for a vacation home in Aspen. He was not just cheating on me, he was making me pay for it. He was funding his betrayal with the money I had helped earn, using a card that sat in his wallet right next to the picture of us from our wedding day. My hand did not tremble as I reached for the snipping tool on my desktop. I took a screenshot of the reservation details. I captured the check-in time, the special request for hypoallergenic pillows, and the note about the champagne brand. I saved the files. Then I created a new folder on my hard drive. I did not name it Divorce or Evidence. I named it Project Alpha, encrypted it with a 20-character password, and moved the files inside. Next, I opened the security camera software. As the manager, I had unrestricted access to every camera in the building except inside the guest rooms. I selected the lobby feed and rewound the timeline by 10 minutes. There they were. I watched it in high definition. I watched Grant hold the door for her. I watched his hand slide down her back, resting just above the curve of her hip with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. This was not a nervous first date. This was not a sudden lapse in judgment. They moved together like two planets in a stable orbit. He leaned in to whisper something, and she laughed, leaning her weight against him. They looked like a couple. They looked happy. I saved the video clip. I exported it in the highest resolution available and dragged it into the encrypted folder. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text from Marin Cole, my assistant manager on the night shift. Maintenance issue in room 512. Guest is complaining about a dripping faucet. Should we move them or send engineering? I looked at the message. My husband was upstairs with another woman, destroying our decade-long marriage. And room 512 had a leaky tap. I typed back immediately. Send engineering first, if it takes longer than 15 minutes to fix. Offer a move to a deluxe king and comp their breakfast tomorrow. I hit send. The hotel did not stop for heartbreak. The machine had to keep running. I picked up my personal cell phone. I scrolled to the favorites list and pressed the contact for Tessa Morgan. Tessa was the best public relations strategist in the city. A woman who could spin a hurricane into a refreshing breeze. She was also the only person I trusted to hear me say the words out loud without judging me. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, lady. I thought you were working the floor tonight." I took a breath. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and metallic. "He just checked in with a mistress." I said, "At my hotel." There was silence on the other end. It lasted exactly 2 seconds. Then I heard the sound of a chair scraping back, and Tessa inhaling sharply to scream. I cut her off before she could start. "Do not scream," I said, my voice flat. "Come to my house tonight. Bring a bottle of the expensive scotch. And Tessa? I need a lawyer. Not a nice one. I need a shark." I hung up before she could ask questions. I could not handle questions yet. I only had capacity for facts. I turned back to my computer. I opened a new tab and logged into our online banking portal. I had not looked closely at the statements in months. I trusted Grant. He handled the investments. I handled the day-to-day household expenses. It was a division of labor that I now realized was a catastrophic error. I pulled up the last 6 months of transactions for the joint account. I started scrolling, my eyes scanning for anomalies. At first, it looked normal. Mortgage payments, utility bills, grocery runs. But then I saw it, 3 weeks ago, a charge for $400 at a florist in Chicago. I had not received flowers 3 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, a weekend stay at a boutique hotel in San Francisco. Grant had told me he was at a conference in Seattle that weekend. 2 months ago, a dinner for 2 at Le Bernardin in New York. The bill was $850. I remembered that night. He had texted me a photo of a room service burger, claiming he was too tired to go out. I kept scrolling back. The screen became a map of my own stupidity. Jewelry stores, spas, high-end lingerie shops. The charges were scattered among legitimate expenses, hidden in plain sight. He had been building a second life, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, right under my nose. I felt a cold rage settle in my gut, heavy and solid as a stone. This was not just an affair. This was theft. He had stolen my trust. Yes, but he had also stolen our future. Every dollar he spent on her was a dollar he stole from the retirement we talked about, from the home we were planning to build. I downloaded every statement. I highlighted every suspicious transaction in yellow. I was building a dossier. If he wanted a war, he was going to get one, but he would not be fighting a wife who cried and threw vases. He would be fighting a woman who knew how to audit a ledger down to the last penny. I checked the time. 6:45. I had been in the office for 31 minutes. I stood up and walked to the small mirror hanging on the back of the door. I checked my lipstick. I smoothed a stray hair back into my bun. I looked at the woman in the reflection. Her eyes were hard, but her face was composed. She looked like the operations manager of a 5-star hotel. I unlocked the door and stepped back out into the hallway. I had a hotel to run, and later tonight, I had a husband to dismantle. The sun rose over Denver at 6:32 in the morning, casting a pale, unforgiving light on my kitchen table. I had not slept, but I was not tired. Adrenaline is a powerful fuel, and I was running on a full tank. My phone sat on the granite counter, silent. I did not call Grant. I did not text him to ask how his fictional business meetings in Chicago were going. I did not check the hotel security feed to see if he and Sloane Keating had ordered room service. That phase was over. The emotional shock had calcified into something far more useful: strategy. Instead of calling my husband, I dialed a number I had obtained from a discreet inquiry within the hotel's legal department years ago, filed away for a crisis I hoped never to face. Dana Whitlock was not just a divorce lawyer. She was a demolition expert who specialized in collapsing marriages without getting dust on her suit. Her office was in Cherry Creek, a fortress of glass and steel that smelled of expensive coffee and intimidation. I arrived at 8:15, 15 minutes before my appointment, carrying a leather portfolio that contained the printed contents of the Project Alpha folder. Dana was a woman who looked like she had been born wearing a blazer. She sat behind a desk that was wider than my dining table, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. I did not waste time with pleasantries. I slid the binder across the mahogany surface. "Here is the reservation data," I said, keeping my voice level. "Here are the cross-referenced credit card statements for the last 6 months. Here's the video evidence of them checking in. Here is a timeline of his alleged business trips, correlated with the geolocation data from the photos he posted on his private social media, which I accessed via his iPad left at home." Dana opened the binder. She flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning the highlighted rows of data. She paused on the spreadsheet where I had calculated the exact amount of marital funds spent on hotels, dinners, and flights that coincided with his absences. She looked at the screenshot of the surveillance footage. She turned a page, then another. After 2 minutes of silence, she closed the binder and looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "Mrs. Wilder," she said, "do you manage a luxury hotel, or do you work for the FBI?" "I manage a hotel," I replied, "which means I know how to audit a ledger, and I know when someone is stealing from inventory. In this case, the inventory is my life." Dana nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "This is excellent. Most clients come in here with tears and a vague suspicion. You brought me a conviction." She leaned forward, clasping her hands. "We are going to file on the grounds of adultery. Obviously, but this financial data you have compiled gives us a much sharper weapon. It is called dissipation of assets." I waited for her to explain. "Though I had already Googled the term at 3 a.m. in Colorado," she continued. "If one spouse uses marital funds for a purpose unrelated to the marriage, like, say, a 5-star hotel suite for a mistress, that is considered dissipation. It means the court can order him to reimburse the marital estate for every penny he spent on her. And since you have proof that he used a joint account, we are not just looking at a divorce settlement, we are looking at a clawback operation." I nodded. "It is not enough," I said. Dana raised an eyebrow. I looked at the binder. The credit card statements I found show about $40,000 in questionable spending over the last year. But Grant is an investment banker. He moves money for a living. If he was careless enough to use the joint visa for the hotel, it is because he wanted the points, or he was just arrogant. But I have a feeling this is just the surface. He has been too protective of his laptop lately. He changed his passwords 3 months ago. Dana tapped her pen on the desk. "You think he is hiding assets. I think he's moving capital." I corrected. "And I want to know where it is going before I serve him the papers." Dana smiled, and it was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. "Then we need to bring in a specialist. I work with a forensic accountant named Evan Rourke. He does not just look at numbers, he interrogates them. If your husband has moved so much as $10 into a crypto wallet or an offshore shell, Evan will find it. He digs for money the way a dog digs for a bone." "Hire him." I said, "I want a full forensic audit of every account, every holding, and every tax return for the last 5 years. Consider it done." Dana said. She made a note on her legal pad. "Now, go back to work. Act normal. Do not change the locks yet. Do not cut off his credit cards. We need him to feel safe. When a man feels safe, he makes mistakes." I left her office and drove straight to the Fairmont Hollow. My shift started at 10 o'clock. I walked into the hotel through the employee entrance, changed into my spare blazer because I felt contaminated by the morning, and stepped onto the floor. The hotel was in chaos. A wedding party of 300 guests was checking in for the Vanderbilt Ross nuptials, and the mother of the bride was currently screaming at the concierge about the shade of hydrangeas in the lobby arrangements. I approached the situation with a calm that terrified me. Usually, my heart rate would spike during a confrontation like this. Today, my pulse was steady at 60 beats per minute. "Mrs. Vanderbilt," I said, interrupting her tirade with a voice as smooth as velvet. "I understand the flowers are not to your liking. I will have the florist here in 20 minutes to replace the blue hydrangeas with the white orchids you prefer. In the meantime, I have upgraded your parents to the club level so they can enjoy afternoon tea while they wait for their rooms." The woman stopped mid-scream. She blinked. She looked at me, searching for a crack in my armor, but there was none. I was not a person anymore. I was a function. I was a problem-solving machine. "Thank you," she stammered. I turned to the concierge, whose face was pale. "Call the florist. Put the upgrade in the system. Make it happen." I walked away before they could respond. Throughout the day, I moved through the hotel like a ghost in the machine. I approved the weekly scheduling roster. I reconciled the food and beverage budget for the previous month. I handled a dispute between two housekeeping staff members. I did it all with a surgical precision that made my assistant, Marin, look at me with concern. "You are okay?" Marin asked around 2 in the afternoon, handing me a coffee. "You are intense today." "I am fine," I said, taking the coffee without looking up from my screen. Just focused. I was focused, but not on the hotel. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Tessa. "I have the timeline. Check your secure email." I went into my office and locked the door. I opened the encrypted Proton Mail account I had set up the night before. Tessa had outdone herself. She had taken the dates of Grant's supposed business trips over the last 2 years and cross-referenced them with the credit card statements I had sent her. It was a map of betrayal. August 12th to August 14th. Alleged client meeting in Boston. Reality: 2 dinners at a steakhouse in Aspen and a spa charge. October 4th to October 6th. Alleged conference in Dallas. Reality: no flight charges to Dallas. Uber rides in Denver and a charge at a local wine bar. He had not even left the city half the time. He had been staying in hotels 5 miles from our house while I sat on the couch watching movies alone, thinking he was working hard for our future. But then my eyes stopped on an entry from 3 months ago. December 10th. I remembered that date. It was a Tuesday. Grant had come home late, saying he had been stuck in a portfolio review. On the statement, there was a charge for $8,950. The merchant was Cartier. I stared at the screen. $8,950. I looked down at my own hand. I was wearing my wedding band, a simple gold band, and a modest engagement ring. I did not own anything from Cartier. I had never received a gift worth $9,000 in my entire life. For my last birthday, he had given me a gift card to a bookstore and a scarf. I felt a wave of nausea, but I swallowed it down. This was not just cheating. This was a redistribution of wealth. He had taken $9,000 of our money that could have paid off the car, money that could have gone into the investment account, and wrapped it around another woman's wrist or neck. I forwarded the email to Dana. "Add this to the list." I typed, "Cartier, $9,000. I never saw the item." Dana replied 4 minutes later, "Evan is already on it. We are going to trace that transaction. If he bought jewelry for a mistress with marital funds, the judge is going to let you keep the house and probably his car too. But Claire, listen to me. A purchase that size usually means there is more. People who spend $9,000 on a Tuesday usually have a reservoir of cash they are drawing from. We are going to find the leak." I closed the laptop. I sat in the silence of my office. Outside, the hotel was buzzing with the energy of 300 wedding guests celebrating love and eternal commitment. Inside, I was calculating the depreciation of my own marriage. Grant thought he was checking out on Friday. He had no idea that his bill was still accumulating, and the surcharge for betrayal was going to be astronomical. I picked up my pen and went back to the budget report. I had numbers to crunch. The sound of the key turning in the front door lock used to be the best part of my day. It used to mean that the house was about to become a home again. Now, sitting at the dining room table with a single manila folder centered on the placemat before me, the sound was indistinguishable from a physical threat. It was 8:15 in the evening. The house was perfectly silent. I had turned off the ambient music. I had dimmed the lights in the hallway. I wanted him to walk into a space that felt unfamiliar, a space that had already rejected him before I even opened my mouth. Tessa was in the guest bedroom down the hall. Her car was parked 3 blocks away so he would not suspect an ambush. We had agreed on a safe word. If I said the word reservation, she would come out with her phone recording and, if necessary, a baseball bat she had found in my garage. I did not think it would come to violence. Grant was not a physical fighter. He was a coward who fought with lies and hidden bank accounts. But I needed to know she was there because my hands were trembling under the table. And I needed to be the only one who knew that. The door opened. Grant stepped inside. He still had his suitcase. He looked exhausted. His tie loosened. His jacket slung over one arm. He looked like a man returning from a long business trip, which was a performance so committed it was almost impressive given that I had seen him check into a hotel room 4 miles away 26 hours ago. "Claire?" he called out. His voice was tentative. He knew something was wrong. The house was too quiet. The air was too heavy. "I am in the dining room," I said. My voice did not echo. It was absorbed by the walls. He walked in. When he saw me sitting there, straight-backed, hands folded on the table next to the folder, he stopped. He dropped his suitcase. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. "Claire, listen," he started. He took a step forward, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender that felt rehearsed. "I can explain. It is not what it looked like yesterday." I said nothing. I just watched him. "I panicked," he said, the words tumbling out faster now. "I saw you, and I just froze. It was a misunderstanding. I was helping a colleague. Sloan is just a colleague. She had a housing emergency and needed a place to stay. And I was just helping her check in because she does not have a credit card with a high enough limit and—" "Stop," I said. The word was quiet, but it cut through his frantic babbling like a guillotine blade. He closed his mouth. "Sit down," I said. He hesitated, then pulled out the chair opposite me. He sat on the edge of the seat, looking ready to bolt. "You are lying, Grant," I said, "and you are bad at it. Sloan Keating does not have a housing emergency. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in Lowhigh. I checked the public records this morning, and colleagues do not hold each other by the waist. Colleagues do not book the romantic getaway package with champagne and late checkout." Grant ran a hand through his hair. He looked pale. Okay, fine. It was a mistake. A stupid, one-time mistake. I was weak." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading for the empathy I had given him for 10 years. "But Claire, you have to look at this from my side," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have been so distant lately. You are always at the hotel. You work 60 hours a week. I come home to an empty house half the time. I felt lonely. I just wanted someone to look at me like I mattered. I felt a flash of heat behind my eyes, but I extinguished it instantly. "Do not do that," I said. "Do what?" he asked, blinking. "Do not turn your betrayal into my failure." I said. My voice was low and dangerous. "Do not dare sit there and tell me that you slept with another woman because I work hard to pay the mortgage on the roof over your head. You did not cheat because I was busy. You cheated because you wanted to, and you thought you were smart enough not to get caught." I flipped open the folder. I slid the first sheet of paper across the table. "This is the credit card authorization for the room," I said. 3 nights, $2,400 a night. I slid the next sheet. "This is the receipt for the Cartier bracelet you bought in December. $9,000. I slid the third sheet. "This is a timeline of every business trip you have taken in the last 18 months. Cross-referenced with charges at local restaurants and hotels here in Denver. You were not in Boston in August. You were at the Ritz-Carlton downtown. You were not in Dallas in October. You were at a bed and breakfast in Boulder." Grant looked at the papers. His face went from pale to a sickly shade of gray. He reached out to touch the paper with the Cartier charge, his fingers shaking. "You went through my records?" he whispered. "I manage a business." "Grant," I said, "I know how to spot an embezzlement scheme. And that is what this is. You are not just cheating on me. You are embezzling from our marriage." Then I slid the final photo across. It was a high-resolution still from the lobby security camera. It showed the moment right before he saw me. His face was buried in Sloane's neck. Her hand was in his hair. It was a picture of intimacy so raw, it made the air in the room feel toxic. Grant stared at the photo. He could not deny the body language. It was not a mistake. It was a relationship. "Claire, please," he said. his voice cracking. He stood up abruptly and came around the side of the table. He reached for my hand. "Baby, please, we can fix this. I will end it. I will call her right now and end it. Just do not throw this away. I love you." I stood up and took a sharp step back, putting the chair between us. "Do not touch me," I said. The command was absolute. He froze, his hand hovering in midair. "I do not want your apology," I said, "and I certainly do not want your touch. I want you to leave." "Leave?" he repeated, looking around the room as if realizing for the first time that his position here was tenuous. "You cannot just kick me out. Claire, this is my house too." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Actually, it is not," I said. I pointed to the filing cabinet in the corner of the room. "My father bought this house for me 6 months before we met." I said, "The deed is in my name, solely. We never added you to the title because you said you wanted to keep your finances separate for tax purposes. Remember?" Grant remembered. I saw the memory hit him. He had insisted on it, claiming his complex investment portfolio made joint property risky. It had been a lie then, probably to keep his assets liquid, but now it was the noose around his neck. "You are a guest here, Grant," I said, "and your reservation has been canceled." He stared at me, his jaw working. Anger started to replace the fear in his eyes. He realized the power dynamic had shifted completely. He was not the husband being scolded. He was a trespasser being evicted. "You are really going to do this?" he sneered. "Over one girl? Over nothing?" He gestured vaguely at the door, at the world outside where Sloane Keating existed. "Sloane means nothing," he said, his voice rising. "She is just a distraction. She is not real. Claire, you and I, we are real. She is just filler." I looked at him, and for the first time in 2 days, I felt something other than rage. I felt pity, not for him, but for the woman waiting for him in a hotel room I was paying for. "She means nothing?" I repeated. "No," he said firmly. "Nothing." I looked him dead in the eye. "Do you say that to everyone you hurt?" I asked. "Did you say that about me when you were with her? Did you tell her I meant nothing? That I was just the roommate who paid the bills?" Grant fell silent. The truth was written all over his face. Of course he had. We were all just characters in the story he told to get what he wanted. "Get out," I said. He stood there for a long moment, weighing his options. He looked at the folder on the table. He looked at the camera on the ceiling in the hallway. He looked at the fire in my eyes. He realized he had no leverage. He turned around and walked to the door. He picked up his suitcase. He did not look back. He opened the door and stepped out into the night. I walked to the door and locked it. I engaged the deadbolt. Then I engaged the chain. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. My legs felt like water. I slid down to the floor, sitting on the entryway mat. Tessa came out of the guest room. She did not say a word. She just sat down next to me on the floor and handed me a glass of scotch. I took a sip. It burned, but it felt clean. The house was quiet again. But this time, it was not empty. It was free. The sense of relief I felt after locking Grant out lasted exactly 14 hours. It evaporated the moment I opened the encrypted email from Evan Rourke at 10 o'clock the next morning. I was sitting in my office at the hotel. The door shut, a cup of lukewarm black coffee untouched on my desk. The subject line of the email was simple: Preliminary Audit Findings, Phase 1. I clicked it open, expecting to see more details about the jewelry, or perhaps another weekend getaway I had missed. I was not prepared for the reality of what Evan had found. It was not a single explosion. It was a termite infestation. Attached was a spreadsheet titled Structured Outflows. Evan's summary was brief and brutal. "Mrs. Wilder, please look at tab B. Over the last 18 months, I have identified 47 separate transfers from your joint checking account to an external digital wallet. None of these transfers triggered a fraud alert because they were all kept deliberately small. $300 here, $550 there. The largest single transfer was $900. I scrolled down the list. The dates were random. The amounts were innocuous. They looked like grocery bills or utility payments or perhaps cash withdrawals for a night out. But when added together, the total at the bottom of the column made my stomach drop. $38,600. That was nearly $40,000 siphoned out of our life, drop by drop, while I was sleeping next to him. That was the down payment on the rental property we had talked about buying. That was the safety net I thought we had. I picked up the phone and called Dana immediately. She answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting for me to read it. "I see you got the report," Dana said. Her voice was devoid of the usual legal detachment. It was sharp. $38,600. I said, saying the number out loud to make it real. He stole nearly $40,000 in 18 months. This is not just theft, Claire, Dana said. This is what we call sophisticated dissipation. He kept the amounts under the reporting threshold to avoid triggering bank inquiries or alerting you. This requires planning. This requires intent. This is not a man who slipped up. This is a man who was building a life raft while he was still on your ship. There is more. Dana continued. Look at page 3 of Evan's report. I clicked to the next page. Credit inquiry. Chase Sapphire Reserve. We found a secondary credit card issued in your name. Dana said, it was opened 7 months ago. The credit limit is $50,000. I frowned, staring at the screen. I do not have a Chase Sapphire. I only use the Amex. Exactly, Dana said. But the card exists. It is in your name, using your social security number. But the billing address is a P.O. box in Lohi, and the contact email is not yours. I looked at the email address listed on the application, barnaby1999@gmail.com. The room suddenly felt very small. The air conditioner hummed, but I could not hear it over the rushing of blood in my ears. Barnaby, Dana, are you there? I asked, my voice trembling for the first time that morning. I am here, she said softly. Do you recognize the email? Barnaby was my golden retriever. I whispered, he died when I was 12. I have never used that name for a password. I have never used it for an email. I told Grant about him on our second date. I told him how I cried for a week when he died. I told him it was my first real heartbreak. Silence stretched across the line. He used the name of your dead childhood dog to set up a fraudulent account to fund his affair, Dana said. Her voice was cold enough to freeze nitrogen. He used my memory, I said, the realization hardening into a knot of pure fury in my chest. He used the one thing I told him in confidence, a moment of vulnerability, and he turned it into a security key. He did not just break my heart, he hacked it. I stared at the screen. The betrayal was no longer just about sex. It was about a fundamental violation of who I was. He had taken the intimate details of my life and weaponized them against my financial security. What is the balance on the card? I asked. $22,000. Dana replied. We are still waiting on the itemized statement, but Evan suspects it was used for lifestyle expenses, dinners, clothes, maybe rent for the mistress. So he stole $38,000 from our savings, and then racked up $22,000 in debt in my name. I summarized, that is $60,000. Claire, listen to me, Dana said urgent. We are amending the complaint. This goes beyond adultery. We are adding counts of fraud and identity theft. We are going to ask for 100% reimbursement of these funds, plus punitive damages. But you need to be prepared. Prepared for what? When we serve him with this, he is going to panic, she warned. And a man like Grant, a man who uses his wife's dead dog to open credit cards, does not fight fair. He will not just try to hide money. He will try to destroy your credibility. He knows your career is your life. If he can paint you as unstable, or vindictive, or incompetent, he thinks he can force you to settle to make him go away. Let him try. I said, I hung up the phone. I did not cry. I did not throw anything. The time for emotions had passed. Now was the time for perimeter defense. I stood up and walked out of my office, heading straight for the server room in the basement. I needed to see David, the head of IT security for the hotel. David was a man of few words who lived in the glow of monitors. When I walked in, he spun his chair around, surprised to see the operations manager in his dungeon. "Claire, is everything okay?" he asked. "I need a full security audit of my digital footprint." "David," I said, closing the door behind me. "Right now." David blinked. "Did we have a breach?" "I had a breach," I said. "My personal life has been compromised, and the attacker has knowledge of my passwords, my security questions, and my personal history. I need you to lock down everything that touches this hotel." I pulled up a chair and sat next to him. "Grant knows my login for the payroll system because I used to check it from home." I said, "He knows the answers to my security questions. Mother's maiden name, name of first pet, high school mascot. He knows all of it." David's face went serious. He turned back to his keyboard. "Okay," he said, his fingers flying. "We are going to kill all remote access sessions immediately. I am going to force a global password reset for your admin accounts. We will switch your authentication to a physical hardware key. He will not be able to log in unless he has the USB drive in your pocket. Do it," I said. "And Claire?" David hesitated. "If he tries to access the system?" I looked at the monitor, watching the lines of code scroll by. "If he tries to log in, I want to know." I said, "Log the IP address, log the time, log the device type. I want a record of every time he rattles the doorknob." I watched as David erected a digital wall around my career. It was the only thing I had left that Grant had not tainted. He had taken my past, my memories, and my money. He would not take my hotel. My phone buzzed again. It was Tessa. "He is texting our mutual friends." The message read, "He is telling them you are having a breakdown. He is saying the stress of the job made you paranoid, and he is worried about your mental state." I stared at the text. Dana was right. He was already trying to rewrite the narrative. He wanted to make me the crazy wife so that when the financial crimes came out, people would think I made them up. I typed back, "Let him talk. He is digging his own grave. Just make sure you screenshot everything." I put the phone down. I felt a strange sense of calm. It was the calm of a soldier who realizes the bombardment has stopped and the ground war has begun. I had a 2-layer plan now. Layer 1. Win the divorce and get my money back. Layer 2. Protect the hotel at all costs. Grant thought he was fighting a wife who was hurt. He did not realize he was fighting a manager who dealt with crises for a living. He had started a fire in my lobby, thinking I would burn. He forgot that I was the one who held the keys to the sprinkler system. I looked at David. "Done," David said. "You are locked down." "Thank you," I said. I stood up and smoothed my blazer. I had a meeting with the catering director in 10 minutes. I walked out of the server room and back into the light of the hotel, ready to smile and shake hands, while beneath the surface, I was preparing to bury my husband under a mountain of evidence. The office of Malcolm Pierce was located on the penthouse floor of the hotel, a space so quiet that the noise of the city below seemed like a memory rather than a reality. Malcolm was the founder of the Larkhaven Hospitality Group, a man who had built an empire on the philosophy that luxury was not about gold taps, but about anticipation. He knew what you wanted before you knew you wanted it. When his executive assistant told me that Mr. Pierce wanted to see me immediately, I did not panic. Panic is for amateurs. I adjusted my blazer, checked my reflection in the elevator panel to ensure my composure was absolute, and ascended to the 42nd floor. I expected a conversation about my leave of absence. In the hospitality industry, a manager going through a messy. Public divorce is often viewed as a liability. Emotions are messy, and mess does not belong in a 5-star lobby. I was prepared to negotiate for a 2-week sabbatical. I was prepared to fight for my job. I was not prepared for Malcolm. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the Denver skyline. When I entered, he turned. He was a man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Sit down." "Claire," he said. I sat in one of the leather armchairs facing his desk. "News travels fast in our world," Malcolm said, bypassing all pleasantries. "My general manager at the Saint. Regis called me this morning. Apparently, The housekeeping staff there is talking about a scene in your lobby involving your husband. I kept my back straight. It was not a scene. Mr. Pierce, I corrected gently. It was a transaction. My husband checked in with a companion. I processed his reservation. I maintained professional standards throughout the interaction. Malcolm looked at me for a long moment. Then, a small, grim smile touched his lips. I know, he said. I reviewed the footage myself. Most people would have thrown a vase. You upsold him a spa package. That is why you are sitting here. He slid a piece of paper across the polished mahogany desk. It was an internal memorandum, stamped with the corporate seal. Effective immediately. Grant Wilder and a Ms. Sloane Keating are placed on the global blacklist for all Larkhaven properties, Malcolm said. They are not welcome in Denver. They are not welcome in New York. They are not welcome in our resorts in the Maldives. If they try to book a room, the system will flag them as security risks. I felt a tightness in my chest loosen slightly. My workplace was no longer a potential crime scene. It was a sanctuary. Thank you. Malcolm, I said. He waved his hand, dismissing the gratitude. That is housekeeping. This is business. He placed a second folder on the desk. It was thicker than the first. I have been watching your performance metrics for the last 3 quarters, he said. Your occupancy rates are up 8%. Your guest satisfaction scores are the highest in the region. You handle crises with a level of detachment that frankly frightens some of the board members. But I find it invaluable. He tapped the folder. We are acquiring 2 new boutique properties, one in St. Louis, one in Santa Fe. They are chaotic. The management is sloppy. The staff is demoralized. I need someone to go in there and tighten the screws. I am offering you the position of regional operations lead. You will keep your base here in Denver. But those 2 hotels will report directly to you. I stared at the folder. My husband was trying to dismantle my life, trying to turn me into a victim. And here was my boss handing me an empire. I was not falling. I was ascending. I would be honored. I said, Good, Malcolm said. But there is one more thing. His tone changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by the cold, hard edge of a man who protected his money aggressively. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. We are doing a routine audit of our supply chain, he said. Specifically, our contract with a company called Apex Linens. They supply the bedding and towels for the entire Western region. We suspect they have been overcharging us by nearly 15% on every invoice for the last 2 years. I nodded, listening. Vendor fraud was not uncommon. I was looking through the email correspondence between our purchasing department and Apex, Malcolm continued, and I found something that bothered me. There were several emails where the Apex sales director referenced an external consultant who helped facilitate the renewal of their contract last year. Malcolm paused. They referred to him as the banker, and in one email, which was accidentally forwarded to us, the sales director wrote, Tell Grant we are good for the commission. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Grant, I repeated, my husband is an investment banker. He has nothing to do with hotel operations, but as I sat there, the pieces clicked together with the terrifying precision of a loaded gun. Grant knew my vendors. He knew my budgets. He knew exactly when contracts were up for renewal, because I talked about work at the dinner table. I had treated him as a partner, and he had treated me as an insider trading tip. Do you think he brokered the contract? I asked, my voice steady despite the nausea rising in my throat. I think he might have used his connection to you to guarantee them the business in exchange for a kickback, Malcolm said. And if he did that? Claire, he did not just steal from me. He compromised your professional integrity. I stood up. The rage I felt was different from the heartbreak. This was cold. This was professional. He had invaded my home, and now I knew he had invaded my career. Mr. Pierce, I said, I want permission to handle this. Malcolm raised an eyebrow. If we bring in outside investigators now, it will become a scandal. I explained. The industry will say I was complicit. They will say I funneled money to my husband. I cannot let that narrative take hold. Let me conduct a quiet internal audit. I will pull the logs. I will find the paper trail. If he took money from Apex, I will find where he hid it. Malcolm studied me. He saw the fire in my eyes, cold and controlled. "You have 48 hours," he said. "Bring me the head of the operation." I walked out of his office with a promotion in one hand and a warrant for my husband's professional execution in the other. I returned to my desk, my mind racing. I needed to access the purchasing archives. I needed to see every email Grant had ever sent to my work address. But as I sat down, a notification popped up on my second monitor. It was an alert from our reputation management software. New review, 1 star. I clicked on it. User, Traveler88. Title, Worst Experience in Denver. Review. I have never been treated so rudely in my life. The manager, Claire Martin, is an absolute nightmare. She was condescending, discriminatory, and refused to help us with a simple request. She should be fired immediately. Avoid this hotel at all costs. I frowned. I had not interacted with any unhappy guests in days. Another notification pinged. New review, 1 star. User, Mile High Guy. Review. Claire Martin is unstable. She screamed at a staff member in the lobby. Unprofessional and hysterical. How does she still have a job? Then another, and another. They were popping up on TripAdvisor, on Yelp, on Google Reviews, all within the last 20 minutes, all targeting me by name, all using words like unstable, hysterical, rude. It was a coordinated attack. Grant knew that in the hospitality industry. Reputation is currency. If he could not get me fired by stealing from me, he would try to get me fired by destroying my public image. He was trying to bury me under a landslide of fake algorithms. I watched the screen as a fourth review appeared. User, Denver native. Review. I heard the manager is going through a mental breakdown. It shows in her service. Sad. I did not type a response. I did not flag them for removal yet. That would be playing defense. I picked up my phone and opened my text thread with Tessa. It has started. I typed, "He is hitting the review sites. He is using bot farms to target me personally." I looked at the screen, at the lies scrolling past. Grant thought this would break me. He thought I would run to Malcolm crying, begging for it to stop. He forgot one thing. I manage a hotel. I deal with angry people for a living, and I know the difference between a real complaint and a fabrication. I minimized the review window and opened the procurement database. Let him play with his bots. I was going hunting for his bank accounts. The text message arrived at 10:42 in the morning, vibrating against the mahogany surface of my desk like a trapped insect. It was from a number I did not recognize, an area code that belonged to the suburbs south of the city. I need to talk, not to ask for forgiveness. I have evidence you need. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the block button. My instinct was to erase her existence from my phone, just as I had erased her booking from my system. I did not want to speak to Sloane Keating. I did not want to hear her voice or see the face that had been buried in my husband's neck. I wanted her to be a static villain, a two-dimensional cardboard cutout that I could simply discard. But I am not a woman who operates on instinct alone. I operate on counsel. I took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to Dana. Her reply came within 30 seconds. Do not meet her alone. Do not promise her immunity. But if she has documents, we take them. Information is ammunition. Claire. Even if it comes from the enemy camp. I typed back to the unknown number. The Roasted Bean on 16th Street. Noon. You have 10 minutes. I chose the location carefully. It was loud, crowded, and public. It was also directly across the street from Tessa's office. I called Tessa immediately. She did not ask questions. She simply said she would be there at 11:50, sitting 3 tables away with a clear line of sight and her phone recording audio. I walked into the cafe at 12 o'clock exactly. The air smelled of roasted coffee and burned milk. I spotted Tessa immediately, hidden behind a newspaper near the window, but I gave no sign of recognition. I scanned the room and saw her. Sloane was sitting at a small round table in the back. She looked different than she had in my lobby. The calculated glamour was gone. She was wearing a gray sweater that looked slightly too large, and her hair was pulled back in a severe, messy bun. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who had not slept since the moment I handed her that key card. I walked over and sat down without saying hello. I placed my phone on the table. Face down. Start talking, I said. Sloane flinched slightly at the tone of my voice. She wrapped her hands around her paper cup as if trying to draw warmth from it. "He told me you were separated," she said. Her voice was quiet, lacking the confident lilt I had heard 2 days ago. "He said the divorce papers were drafted and you were just waiting for the fiscal year to end to sign them because of tax implications. He said you lived in the guest house." I looked at her. It was the standard script, the Cheater's Handbook. Page 1. "We do not have a guest house," I said, my voice flat. "And until Tuesday morning, he slept in the master bedroom with me." Sloane closed her eyes for a second. A look of genuine pain crossed her face. But I did not feel sorry for her. "Pain is the price of admission when you date married men. I know that now," she whispered. "I know I was stupid. I know it looked shady. But I ignored the red flags because he promised me things. I checked my watch. You have 7 minutes left." Sloane took a deep breath and reached into her oversized tote bag. She pulled out a tablet and unlocked it. "He promised to invest in my yoga studio," she said. "That is why I was with him. I mean, I liked him. But the relationship, it was transactional too. He said he had capital he needed to deploy." She pushed the tablet across the table toward me. "Look at this," she said. I looked down at the screen. It was a screenshot of a text conversation between Sloane and Grant. The date was from 3 weeks ago. Grant: "Good news. Babe, the vendor contract went through. Commission is secured. Claire signed off on it this morning. So the compliance team is happy. That puts $50,000 in the pot for your studio build-out." Attached to the text was a photo of a document. I zoomed in. My blood ran cold. It was a renewal contract for Apex Linens. And at the bottom of the page, right next to the date, was a signature. Claire Martin. I stared at the looping script. It looked like my signature. It had the same slant, the same distinctive C. But I had never signed this document. I had flagged the Apex contract for review 2 months ago because of pricing irregularities. I had never approved the renewal. He forged it. I said. The realization was a physical weight in my stomach. Sloane nodded. "I did not know that. He told me you two were amicable business partners even if the marriage was over. He said you approved the deal to help him cash out his equity. He forged my signature on a 6-figure vendor contract to trigger a kickback." I said, mostly to myself, "This was prison time. This was fraud on a federal level." "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, looking up at her. "You are implicating yourself as an accessory." Sloane swiped the screen to the next image. "Because of this," she said. It was an email. The subject line was damage control. It was sent from Grant's personal email to an address I did not recognize. "Here is the script for the reviews. Use a VPN. Create accounts with generic names. Focus on words like unstable, rude, and discriminatory. We need to tank her credibility scores before the board meeting next month. If she tries to sue, I want her looking like a liability." I read the words. My hands curled into fists under the table. The 1-star reviews. The bots. It was not just petty revenge. It was a preemptive strike to destroy my professional standing so that when the fraud came to light, no one would believe me. He is trying to gaslight the entire internet. I said. Sloane looked down at her coffee. "There is one more thing," she said. Her voice trembled. She opened a banking app on her phone. She navigated to a transaction history and turned the phone toward me. "He told me I needed to put down a deposit to secure the lease for the studio location," she said. "He said he would match it triple once his bonus cleared. I transferred him my savings, everything I had from selling my car and my grandmother's inheritance." I looked at the transaction. "Transfer to Grant Wilder. Amount $12,500. I looked at the destination account number. It ended in 09. I knew that number. It was the same account number Evan Rourke had identified in his forensic report. The secret account where he had been siphoning our marital funds. "He took your money too," I said. Sloane nodded, and a single tear escaped. tracking through the powder on her cheek. He took everything. And this morning, when I asked him about the studio lease, he blocked me. He told me I was too much drama and that he needed to focus on his wife. She let out a bitter, choked laugh. Focus on his wife. After he spent the weekend telling me you were a monster. I sat back in my chair. The picture was complete. Grant was not just a cheater. He was a predator. He was running a Ponzi scheme of affection, using money from one woman to impress the next, forging documents to steal from my employer, and destroying reputations to cover his tracks. I reached out and took the tablet. I need copies of all of this. I said, the texts, the forgery, the bank transfer. Sloan nodded eagerly. I will send you everything. I want him to pay. I want him to hurt like I hurt. I looked at her. I saw the raw, messy desire for vengeance in her eyes. It mirrored my own. But mine was colder. Mine was tempered by steel. He will pay, I said, but not because you are hurting. Sloan, he will pay because he broke the law. I stood up. I did not offer to pay for her coffee. I did not tell her it would be okay. We were not friends. We were not sisters in solidarity. We were simply two people who had been robbed by the same man. You will hear from my lawyer. I said, we will need you to sign an affidavit authenticating these texts. Sloan looked up at me. Will I get my money back? I looked at the woman who had walked into my hotel with her hand on my husband's back. Get in line, I said. I turned and walked out of the cafe. Tessa was already outside, waiting for me on the corner. She fell into step beside me as we walked briskly down 16th Street. Did you get it? She asked. I got it, I said, gripping my bag tight. He forged my signature on a vendor contract, and he stole $12,000 from her to put into the secret account. Tessa let out a low whistle. That is grand larceny. That is forgery. That is wire fraud. And the reviews? I asked. Tessa held up her phone. I recorded the whole thing. The email he sent orchestrating the review bomb? That proves malice. We can use that to get the reviews taken down and sue him for defamation. Good, I said. I stopped at the corner waiting for the light to change. The city was bustling around us, full of people living normal, messy lives. But my life had clarity now. Grant thought he was playing a game of hearts. He did not realize we were playing a game of federal statutes. I pulled out my phone and called Malcolm Pierce. Mr. Pierce, I said when he answered. Claire, do you have an update? I have the head of the operation, I said, and I found the leak. It is not just a kickback. It is forgery. And I have the witness who can prove he signed my name. Bring it to me, Malcolm said. I hung up. The light turned green. I walked across the street. Not toward home, but toward the office. I had a husband to arrest. The call from Malcolm Pierce came at 2:15 in the afternoon, interrupting a budget meeting I was holding with the banquet staff. His voice was not the calm, authoritative baritone I was used to. It was tight. It was the voice of a man watching his stock price flicker. Claire, come up to my office, he said. Now, I did not ask why. I simply capped my pen, apologized to the staff, and walked to the elevator. When I entered the penthouse office, Malcolm was pacing. A file lay open on his desk. The Sterling Group is getting cold feet, he said, turning to face me. They are our primary backers for the St. Louis expansion. They represent $12 million in capital. My stomach tightened. Why? Because one of their managing partners heard a rumor this morning. Malcolm said, a rumor that the incoming regional operations lead is currently the subject of a mental health crisis and is being investigated for discriminatory practices against guests. They are worried about liability. They are worried about the brand. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. They are asking if I need to delay the appointment. He said quietly, I understood immediately. This was Grant's endgame. He knew he could not win in court. The forensic evidence was too strong. So he had decided to burn the battlefield. If he destroyed my reputation, I would lose the promotion. If I lost the promotion, I lost the income I needed to pay Dana and Evan. If I lost the income, he could force a settlement where I dropped the fraud charges just to survive. It was not just a smear campaign, it was economic warfare. I felt a cold, sharp anger crystallize in my chest. He was attacking the one thing I had built entirely on my own. Do not delay the appointment. Malcolm. I said, give me 24 hours. You have 12. Malcolm replied. I walked out of his office and went straight to the server room. This was no longer about defending my marriage. This was about defending my competence. Tessa was already there, sitting next to David, my head of IT security. They had 3 monitors set up, displaying a waterfall of data. Tell me you have something, I said, closing the door and locking it. Tessa spun her chair around. Her face was grim but focused. It is a bot farm, but it is a cheap one. She said, look at the syntax. Every single negative review uses the phrase unprofessional conduct or rude behavior within the first 6 words. That is a template. She pointed to the timestamps. And look at the posting times, she added. We got 14 one-star reviews on Google between 3 o'clock and 3:05 yesterday. No human coordination is that tight. That proves they are fake. I said, but it does not prove Grant is behind them. The investors need a name, not just a theory. David cleared his throat. I might have the name. He said. He pulled up a server log on the center screen. While the reviews were being posted, our HR portal was hit with a series of failed login attempts. David explained, someone was trying to access your personnel file. They guessed your password 5 times. They tried variations of your birthday and your mother's maiden name. I leaned in. And we traced the IP address. David said, the requests did not come from a bot network. They came from a static IP address registered to a commercial location downtown. The Collective workspace on Blake Street. I froze. Grant has a membership at the Collective. I said, he goes there when he says he is working late, but does not want to be at the office. David nodded, and the timestamps of the login attempts matched the timestamps of the first wave of reviews perfectly. He was sitting there, logging into the review sites with one hand and trying to hack your HR file with the other. I felt a surge of adrenaline. We had him. Print the logs, I ordered. Map the IP address to the physical location. I want a visual overlay. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Evan Rourke, the forensic accountant. The subject line was simply, got him. I opened it on my phone. Claire, I analyzed the PDF of the Apex Linens renewal contract, the one with your forged signature. The idiot didn't scrub the metadata. The document author is listed as G. Wilder MacBook, and the creation date is 3 weeks ago, at 11:30 at night. But here is the kicker. The image of your signature wasn't drawn. It was a copy-paste from a high-resolution scan of your marriage certificate. I stared at the screen. He had cut my signature off the document that bound us together for life and pasted it onto a document to steal money from my employer. The symbolism was so grotesque it almost made me laugh. I forwarded the email to Dana immediately. Draft the letter. I typed, tell his lawyer we have the metadata and the IP logs. Tell them we are filing for tortious interference with business relations and criminal identity theft. I went back to my office and started assembling the file. I called it the chain of custody. Every piece of evidence, the reviews, the server logs, the metadata, the bank transfers, was printed, time-stamped, and notarized. I was not just building a defense, I was building a cage. At 6:45 that evening, my personal cell phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. I knew who it was. I answered it on the second ring. This is Claire. You are trying to kill me. Grant's voice came through the line. He sounded wrecked. The smooth, confident banker tone was gone, replaced by the high pitch of panic. My lawyer just called me. He said you are threatening to go to the police about the Apex contract. Claire, that is a felony. If you do that, I lose my license. I lose my job. I will be unhireable. I sat back in my chair, looking out at the city lights. You should have thought about that before you forged my name. Grant, I was just trying to fix things, he yelled. I needed the cash to cover some bad trades. I was going to pay it back. I just needed liquidity. And the reviews? I asked calmly. Were you going to pay back my reputation too? He paused. I just wanted you to back off, he said. You were coming at me so hard. I thought if you had some heat at work, you would be too busy to dig into the accounts. I did not think they would actually pull the funding. You gambled with my career to cover your crimes. I said, "Baby, please," he said, his voice dropping to that manipulative, sweet register that used to work on me. Do you really want to see me socially dead? Do you want to see me in handcuffs? After everything we shared? I looked at the photo of us on my desk. I picked it up and placed it face down in the trash can. I am not the one killing you. Grant, I said, you pulled the trigger on yourself the minute you decided I was stupid. I hung up. I blocked the number. I picked up the chain of custody file. It was thick, heavy, and undeniable. I walked back up to the penthouse. Malcolm was still there, staring at his tablet. Make the call. Malcolm, I said. He looked up. What? Call the Sterling Group. I said, tell them the meeting is tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Tell them to come to the hotel. Claire, if you do not have a solid explanation... Malcolm started. I cut him off. I do not have an explanation. I have a presentation. I placed the file on his desk. I am not going to hide from the rumors. I said, I am going to walk into that room and show them exactly what a crisis manager looks like. I am going to show them that the person trying to destroy the hotel's reputation is the same person I'm currently destroying in court. Malcolm looked at the file. Then at me. He saw the steel in my spine. He saw the regional operations lead, standing in front of him. 9 o'clock, he said. Do not be late. I walked out. The panic was gone. The fear was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard certainty of data. Grant had tried to bury me in noise. I was about to bury him in facts. The conference room at Dana Whitlock's law firm was designed to intimidate. It was a glass box suspended 20 stories above the street, filled with light so bright it made it impossible to hide. I sat on one side of the long granite table, with Dana to my right. On the other side sat Grant and his attorney, a man named Mark Ellison, who wore a suit that was too shiny and a smile that did not reach his eyes. Grant looked terrible. He was trying to project the image of a calm, collected investment banker, but the cracks were visible. His tie was slightly crooked. There were dark circles under his eyes that concealer could not quite hide. He would not look at me. He kept his gaze fixed on the water pitcher in the center of the table, as if it contained the answers to the mess he had created. We began at 10 o'clock sharp. Mark cleared his throat and opened a thin folder. My client is willing to be reasonable, Mark began, his voice smooth and condescending. We acknowledge that there were some financial irregularities regarding the joint account. Grant is willing to frame this as a misunderstanding. To put this behind us, he is prepared to offer a structured repayment plan. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Dana did not pick it up. She just looked at it. Structured repayment? She asked, her voice dry. Mark nodded. He will repay the $38,600 over a period of 60 months. No interest. In exchange, Mrs. Wilder will sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement regarding the details of their separation, specifically refraining from discussing any internal business matters of the Larkhaven Hospitality Group. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that made Grant flinch. You want me to loan you the money you stole from me? I said, you want 5 years to pay back what you took in 18 months, and you want me to stay silent so you can keep your job. We prefer the term mutual privacy, Mark said. It protects both your reputations. Dana leaned forward. Let us be clear. Mr. Ellison, your client does not want to protect his reputation. He wants to bury a felony, and frankly, the offer is insulting. We are not here to negotiate a payment plan for a used car. We are here to discuss fraud. Mark stiffened. He glanced at Grant, then decided to change tactics. He dropped the smooth persona and adopted a tone of aggression. If we are talking about felonies, Mark said, let us talk about surveillance. Mrs. Wilder used her position as a hotel manager to access security footage for personal use. She tracked my client without his consent. She monitored his movements. In the state of Colorado, that borders on stalking. If you press on the financial dissipation, we will file a countersuit for invasion of privacy and professional misconduct. We will have her license revoked. Grant finally looked up, a smirk touching the corner of his mouth. He thought this was his ace in the hole. He thought he could scare me with the threat of losing my career, not realizing that I had already secured it. I opened my portfolio. I pulled out a copy of the Larkhaven Employee Handbook, specifically Section 4, Subsection B, regarding security protocols. Please read the highlighted paragraph, I said, sliding it toward Mark. Mark looked down. The operations manager retains full authority to review all surveillance footage from public areas, including the lobby, for the purpose of investigating potential security risks, unauthorized solicitors, or suspicious activity involving registered guests. I folded my hands. Grant checked in as a registered guest. I said, my investigation began when I noticed a discrepancy in the reservation details. I did not place a camera in his room. I did not hack his phone. I used the lobby footage, which is public domain within the hotel, to confirm a booking irregularity. It is standard operating procedure. Mark paused. His momentum stalled. He had expected me to be defensive. He did not expect me to quote policy. Grant slammed his hand on the table. Enough of this. He snapped. He reached into his own briefcase. If you want to play dirty. Claire? Fine. He pulled out a document and threw it onto the granite. You want to talk about fraud? Grant said, his voice rising. Let us talk about the Apex Linens contract. I looked at the document. It was the same forged contract Sloan had shown me. Grant pointed a shaking finger at me. You signed it. Claire, you approved the vendor price hike. You are the one who set up the kickback. I was just the middleman. You used me to funnel the money because you could not take it directly. If I go down for this, you are coming with me. I have the emails to prove it. Dana picked up the contract. She looked at the signature. Then she looked at Grant with an expression that was almost pitying. This is your defense? Dana asked. That Claire masterminded a scheme to defraud her own employer for a few $1,000s? It is the truth. Grant insisted, though sweat was starting to bead on his forehead. She signed it. Look at the signature, I signaled to Dana. She reached into her box of files and pulled out a heavy report bound in black plastic. This is a digital forensics report from Evan Rourke. Dana said, we anticipated you might try this. She opened the report to page 12. We analyzed the digital version of this contract that you sent to the vendor. Dana continued, we looked at the metadata. The file was created on January 4th at 11:45 at night. She looked at Grant. At 11:45 on January 4th. Claire was on a flight to Seattle for a regional conference. Her laptop was in her carry-on bag. Turned off. We have the airline logs to prove she was in the air. Grant swallowed hard. But the file was created on a device named G. Wilder MacBook. Dana said, and the signature? It is a pixel-perfect match for the signature on your marriage certificate from 6 years ago. It was not signed with a pen. It was lifted using Photoshop. Mark Ellison looked at the report. He looked at the metadata analysis. He looked at his client. The color drained from his face. He realized he had been lied to. He realized he had just accused the opposing party of a crime his client had committed. And we had the digital fingerprint to prove it. Mark closed his folder. He sat back. He did not say a word. He was distancing himself from the blast radius. Grant looked around the room, his eyes wild. That proves nothing. He stammered. Someone could have hacked my computer. The door to the conference room opened. Grant spun around. Malcolm Pierce walked in. He was wearing a dark navy suit, and his presence sucked the oxygen out of the room. He did not look at Grant. He walked to the end of the table and stood next to me. Mr. Pierce? Mark asked, standing up nervously. I am here as a witness for the plaintiff. Malcolm said. His voice was deep and resonant. He looked at Grant. We received the metadata analysis this morning. Malcolm said. Larkhaven Hospitality Group takes vendor fraud very seriously. We have already conducted an internal audit. We found the email chain on your server. Grant, we found the instructions you sent to the vendor to inflate the invoices. Grant slumped in his chair. We are preparing to turn this file over to the district attorney's office for investigation into wire fraud and corporate embezzlement. Malcolm said, unless, of course, Mrs. Wilder decides to handle this civilly. The silence that followed was absolute. The hum of the air conditioning was the only sound. Grant looked at me. His arrogance was gone. His anger was gone. He looked small. He looked like a man who had woken up in a burning house and realized he had locked all the doors himself. Claire, he whispered, you cannot do this. You are ruining my life. I looked him in the eye. I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just a cold, clinical clarity. No, Grant, I said, I am not ruining your life. I am just refusing to let you use my life to hide the wreckage of yours. I stood up. Here's the deal, Dana said. Taking over. She slid a new document across the table. It was thick. You will sign this admission of guilt, Dana said. You will repay the full $38,600 immediately. You will pay the $12,500 you stole from Ms. Keating. You will cover Claire's legal fees, which currently stand at $15,000, and you will sign over your equity in the house. Grant stared at the document. And if I do not? He asked, his voice trembling. Then Mr. Pierce calls the district attorney. I said, and instead of writing a check, you will be trading your Italian suits for an orange jumpsuit. Mark Ellison leaned over and whispered in Grant's ear. It was a short whisper. It probably consisted of 2 words. Sign it. Grant picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He looked at me one last time, searching for the wife who used to make him coffee, the wife who used to believe him. She was not there. He signed. The Larkhaven Investor Gala is the single most important night on the fiscal calendar. It is the evening when the lobby of the Fairmont Hollow transforms from a place of transient commerce into a cathedral of old money. The marble floors were polished until they looked like wet ice. The chandeliers were dimmed to a golden haze. A string quartet was playing Debussy in the corner, the music floating over the heads of 300 potential investors holding glasses of vintage champagne. I stood at the top of the grand staircase at 7 o'clock. I was not wearing my uniform. For the first time in 10 years, I was not wearing the invisible armor of a black blazer and a name tag. I was wearing a dress the color of a dark burgundy wine, tailored to within an inch of its life. It was a statement piece. It said that I was not just staff. It said I was the architecture upon which this entire evening rested. Grant was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs. He was wearing a tuxedo that he had bought 3 years ago for a charity ball. Back when we were happy, or when I thought we were happy, he looked frantic. His eyes were darting around the room, scanning the faces of the board members and industry titans, terrified that one of them might know what he had done. When he saw me descend, he took a step forward, breaking the invisible barrier of social etiquette. "Claire," he hissed, his voice strained and low. "I need 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes alone. We cannot do this here." He reached for my elbow. I did not flinch. I did not pull away. I simply stopped moving and looked at his hand until he dropped it. "We are not doing anything. Grant," I said, "the doing is finished. This is just the paperwork." Dana Whitlock stepped out from the shadow of a decorative pillar. She was holding a leather folder. Beside her stood 2 large men in dark suits who were not hotel security. They were private contractors, witnesses. Grant looked at Dana, then back at me. The panic in his eyes spiked. "Here?" he whispered. "You want me to sign it here? In front of everyone?" I looked around the glittering room. I saw Malcolm Pierce speaking with the CEO of the Sterling Group. I saw the vendors who respected me. I saw the life I had built. "You brought your mess into my lobby on Tuesday." I said, "It is only fitting that you clean it up in the lobby on Friday." Dana opened the folder and placed it on a high cocktail table that had been reserved for this exact moment. "The terms are unchanged," Dana said, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the party like a scalpel. "You agree to the full repayment of $38,600 within 12 months. You agree to pay the $12,500 restitution to Ms. Keating. You agree to cover all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Wilder, and you admit, in writing, to the unauthorized use of marital assets for the purpose of fraud. Grant stared at the document. The paper trembled slightly in the draft from the air conditioning. "And the vendor contract?" he asked, his voice shaking. "The forgery? If I sign this, the internal investigation stops, right? You promised you would keep the police out of it." He looked at me with desperate hope. He thought he was buying his life back. He thought that if he gave me the money, he could walk away with his career intact, battered but breathing. I looked past him to where Malcolm Pierce was standing. Malcolm caught my eye. He gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "Grant," I said softly. He looked at me. "I promised I would not call the police," I said, "and I haven't." He let out a breath, his shoulders sagging in relief. He picked up the pen. "Thank you, Claire," he whispered. "I know I do not deserve it, but thank you. I will pay it back. I swear. I will fix this." He signed his name. The scratch of the pen on the paper sounded loud in the quiet circle we had created. He signed the confession. He signed the repayment plan. He signed away his claim to the house. He capped the pen and looked up, a ghost of a smile appearing on his face. "It is done," he said. Dana took the folder. She checked the signature. She nodded at me. "It is done," I agreed. Then Malcolm Pierce walked over. He did not look at Grant with anger. He looked at him with the clinical detachment of a man removing a tumor. "Mr. Wilder," Malcolm said. Grant straightened up, trying to summon some professional dignity. "Malcolm, good to see you. I hope we can put this misunderstanding behind us." Malcolm did not shake his hand. "Mrs. Wilder kept her word." Malcolm said, "She did not contact the police. However, as the chairman of Larkhaven Hospitality, I have a fiduciary duty to my shareholders." Grant went still. "This afternoon," Malcolm continued, his voice devoid of emotion, "I forwarded the complete file regarding the Apex Linens forgery and the associated kickback scheme to the National Association of Securities Dealers and the Corporate Financial Crimes Division. They are opening an investigation into your licensure effective Monday morning." Grant felt the floor drop out from under him. I saw it happen. His face went gray, but Grant stammered. "You said, Claire, you said—" "I said I would not call the police," I interrupted. "I said nothing about protecting your license. You used my name to commit a felony. Grant, you do not get to keep your shield." Grant looked at me with pure horror. He realized then that he had not just lost a wife. He had lost his standing. He was an investment banker who had admitted to fraud. He was finished. "Claire, you are destroying me," he choked out. His eyes were red, filling with tears of self-pity. "I am sorry. I am so sorry." I looked at him. I remembered the man I had married. I remembered the man who had bought me coffee on Tuesday morning before destroying my life. I felt a pang of sadness. But it was distant, like looking at an old photograph of a stranger. I reached into my clutch. I pulled out 2 heavy, cream-colored envelopes. They were his tickets to the gala, the tickets he had been so proud of, the ones he wanted to use to network with my bosses. I placed them on the table. Right next to where he had signed his confession, it was the same gesture I had used with the keycards 3 days ago. 2 fingers, sliding the object across the surface. Grant looked at the tickets. I tilted my head slightly to the side. I summoned the smile that had built my career. The smile that could disarm an angry guest or charm a billionaire. It was perfect. It was professional. It was final. "Hope you enjoyed your stay." "Sir?" I said. Grant opened his mouth to speak, but there was nothing left to say. The security contractors stepped forward, not aggressively, just firmly. They escorted him toward the side exit, away from the champagne, away from the music, and away from me. I did not watch him leave. I turned around as the music swelled. Malcolm Pierce was walking toward the microphone on the small stage at the center of the room. He tapped the mic, and the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, Malcolm said, his voice booming. Tonight is about growth. It is about the future. And there is no one who represents the future of Larkhaven better than the woman standing to my right. A spotlight hit me. I did not blink. I am proud to announce, Malcolm continued, the promotion of Claire Martin to the position of Regional Operations Lead. She will be overseeing our expansion into St. Louis and Santa Fe, bringing the same integrity and excellence she has shown here in Denver. The room erupted in applause. I saw the investors nodding. I saw my staff beaming. I saw the validation of 10 years of work. I walked up the stairs to the stage, my head high, the burgundy dress catching the light. I shook Malcolm's hand. I smiled at the crowd. I had not just survived the fire. I had bought the building. 3 hours later, I walked into my house. It was quiet, the kind of silence that usually felt lonely, but tonight felt like oxygen. I locked the door behind me. I checked the deadbolt. I walked into the kitchen and saw the empty space on the counter where his espresso machine used to be. I did not feel sad. I felt light. I opened my laptop on the kitchen island. I had a flight to St. Louis in 2 days. I had a new budget to approve. I had a team to build. I deleted the folder named Project Alpha. The investigation was over. The case was closed. I turned off the kitchen light and walked down the hall to the bedroom. The bed was large and clean and entirely mine. I lay down and closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I did not wonder where my husband was. I did not wonder who he was texting. I did not have to hold my breath to keep the peace. I exhaled. The bill was paid. The guest had checked out, and the hotel was finally, perfectly, quiet. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope it reminded you that sometimes the best revenge is simply excelling while the other person fails. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please comment down below with your city or country. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe to the Morgan Revenge Stories channel. Hit the like button and smash that hype button to help this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next one.